What's up, guys? It's your boy Smitty here, and on today's video, we are going to be covering the top five decks of what I think the new standard is going to look like after rotation happens on Thursday. Um, Tomorrow is going to be the early access event, so I wanted to at least cover a few decks before we jump into early access. Um, Maybe you guys will see them coming up tomorrow or some versions of these decks. But these are the five that I think are going to be the top videos or the top decks rather, when at least we start standard. Um, then when we feel out the meta, these deck lists might change a little bit to combat the meta. Might find out some other decks that we're not sure about at the moment, or some that pop out of the blue. I don't know where. You never know. But go through all five. Um, I have a sideboard for one of them. The other four, I haven't really gotten to a sideboard yet. I'm not sure if the sideboard is to be made for some of these decks, just because we so. You guys can jump down in the comments. Let me know if you think there's anything that I missed in these decks, or if there's maybe a number of cards that I got wrong. Um, Maybe cards that you think that I missed. And yeah, let's jump right into it. So the first type we got here is green, red, or Gruul modified. Um, Basically, wanted to take advantage of the new Defiler of Vigor. I think this card's gonna be great. Kodama, the West Tree, Halana Elena, Thundering Raiju are all really good cards already. Um, but yeah, for the creatures, we got Shivan Devastator. Um, I think this card has kind of been in the middle ground throughout preview season. A lot of people like it, a lot of people don't like it. I think a lot of people are worried about that it kind of comes in below curve no matter where you're at in the game, but it scales. So, I mean, you pay 4 for a 3/3, 3 for a 2/2, so it's always going to come in under the curve. But this can be a late game bomb. You get it later in the game, say turn 9, turn 10, and all of a sudden you're dropping an 8/8, 9/9, 10/10. So I think this is just going to be a card that is going to be a game ender. Late in the game, you can just drop this and kill the opponent in one swing. Um, Especially if they get low on cards in their hand, they don't have any answers for it. You can just go over the top and win the game outright. We got three copies of that. We got four copies of Gala Greeters. Um, this card is just good. Uh, it's been in a lot of deck lists in this last season through the streets of New Capenna, and I think it's a must include. And anything that has it's a creature based deck or 1/1 counter based deck, it gains you life, it ramps you, it grows bigger throughout the game. It's just a good card. We got for the Curion Beast Caller. Um, I think this card is going to be really good too, especially in a creature based deck like this. It's going to grow up throughout the game. We got 23 creatures in the deck, so we're going to be casting a lot of creature spells. It's going to be growing. I don't think it's going to be quite like the Luminarch Aspirant, which is kind of what it reminds me of in the green version, but I think it's going to be a close second to that. Now that Aspirant's rotating out, is going to be kind of the card that takes its place, and probably a majority of your green decks, especially your creature-based ones. And then when it dies, you can just drop the counters onto something different. Um, the Firelight Vigor's got Trample. And then Kodama of the West Tree um, is going to give us all of our creatures in this deck trample. So if you can, so they kill the beast collar and it's got 3 or 4 1/1 counters on it, you can drop it onto anything else that we have on the board. And as long as we got Kodama out, it's going to have trample, and I think it's just going to be a good play line no matter what. It's going to be a great card. And then we're going to have 3 Kodama of the West Tree. Kind of wanted to put 4 in here. And same with the Holana Elena that we're going to talk about next. But they're both legendary. Uh, so I wanted to cut down on them a little bit. So I took one of each of them out. And then I kind of had a hard time making room for some spells that we have in the deck. And I didn't want to include too many spells, but we needed some type of interaction, some way to combat whatever our opponent's trying to do. So cut down to 3 of these. Obviously, this is going to ramp us, which is going to go great with the Shivan Devastator. Um, we can get way above curve, and ramp a lot, and then we can drop a big Shivan Devastator earlier in the game, and I think it's going to help end games really quickly. Helena Elena, this card kind of speaks for itself as well, like the Gala Greeters does. It's a bomb at the 4-drop, really good card. It's going to give all our creatures haste if they don't have it already. So a combination between the Kodama and the Helena Elena, giving everything haste and trample, because everything's going to have a 1/1 counter on it. I think it's really good common, or a really good uh, way to go about things. It's just going to be, it's going to make our opponent have to have answers for just about everything that hits the board. I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then this thing has first strike and reach as well, so it's going to have first strike, reach, trample. I believe it can give itself haste the turn that it comes out. Oh no, it's another creature. So this is the only creature in the deck that couldn't possibly have haste. And we got Thundering Raiju. This is also a really good card. We've seen it in a lot of like mono red aggro, rule aggro. Just comes in, has haste, attacks the turn it comes out, and puts 1/1 counter on another creature, and then deals excess damage. It's the number of modified creatures to control other than itself, and that can potentially be a lot, especially if we're able to curve out and we don't have our opponent really get rid of any of our creatures right away. And then we have Defiler of Vigor. Like I said, this is the new card out of Dominaria United, and this thing is going to make all of our green spells, which, as you can see, I tried to put as many green permanents in here as I could, really. Um, Obviously, I wanted a lot of creatures anyway. We got one enchantment over here that's green, but almost everything in the deck is going to be able to be cheaper, and we'll just have to pay life in order to cast them. And then it's also going to grow our whole team, and I think this card can just get out of hand. If this sits on the board and isn't answered right away, it's just going to take over games, especially in a deck like this. which I think is it's kind of a high synergy deck. Then we'll jump over to the enchantments. I got for the Kamano Faces Kakazan. Um, this is obviously just a really good aggro card. Deals damage on the first turn to the opponent when it comes out, or a planeswalker, and a planeswalker, each planeswalker they control. Then it puts 1/1 counters on our creatures, and it doesn't want to show back up here. Well, anyway, I think just there we go. And then it turns into a haste creature when the saga flips, and obviously our other creatures can put 1/1 counters on it. So on this too, so this can be a modified creature as well. And then we got for the Jukin defends the temple. Page is acting weird here. This is going to give us a little extra ramp, 1/1 counters, and then when it flips, um, this potentially can make our other creatures huge. Um, I mean, if you got this down and then you drop a Shivan Devastator after it, probably doesn't matter because it kind of does the same effect. But everything else, we can grow them when they come out, and then if we have 5 or more modified creatures, it gets +5/+5 trample, and um, I think that would be pretty easy to do. Um, we are kind of at a high curve, I guess, more of like a mid-rangey deck. So it might be a little bit hard to get to the 5 modified creatures, but I'm not sure because we have the 8/2 drops. Um, so we might get there in some games, we might not get there in some games, but it's still a really good card and it fits the deck well. And spells, um, put in 2 lightning strikes, 2 prize fights. I know that this card is kind of dependent on our board state. We have to have some type of a board for it to be relevant, or else it just sits dead in our hand. But gives you a creature token of Ram 2. It's good removal for the deck as long as we have a creature on board. I think the majority of the time you're going to have a bigger creature than what your opponents do. So I think it's almost always going to be relevant as long as you have a creature on the board, it's going to kill something. Um, maybe just about anything. And then put one Tameo Safekeeping in here. It was kind of the card that I squeezed in there by cutting some of these legendaries. And we have 2 Boseiju. I went 2 Boseiju that way because I know they're legendary, but we can play one, and then we still have another one in the deck to get rid of a problem artifact or enchantment. I think the enchantment thing is going to be really relevant in the new standard. So I might even want to put this up to 3. That way you kind of get that effect. But we're only playing 24 lands, so I put 2. 2 Field of Ruins. I don't know how many lands are going to be like problem lands in the new standard. I haven't really looked into what kind of lands that we have as far as the man lands and everything. Um, but in a 2-color deck, it's no big deal to throw it in there. We should be good on mana no matter what. 9 forests, 7 mountains. Put 3 of the pain lands in here. I think this just gives us a little bit of flexibility. Oops. For oh, it's gone. Puts a little bit of flexibility in here for the early game, just in case we're not hitting our other color that we need. We do have a couple of double reds, double greens, so I think it'll just help. And then most of the time, it's just going to be, you can tap this for a colorless, won't do any damage to you, so it shouldn't be too bad. And then 1 Sakanzan Crucible of Defiance. I think I mostly put this in here for the two 1/1 spirits for the channel effect. Um, might not use it for that. Might use it for that. It might be relevant at some point in time. At the end of games, maybe you just toss these out there on your opponent's turn, and then you're able to win on your turn. So we'll, just in case they like board wipe you or something, especially against control decks. I get stuck against control decks with them getting down to like 1 or 2 life a lot, and this could just be the card that gets you over the top. And then of course we have uh, at least 2 legendary creatures in the deck that will make this cheaper. So that's Gruul modified. And I think this is going to be a really good deck in the first couple of weeks of Standard. I think it's going to be a really good deck going forward after that. Might not be exactly this list, like I said, but I think this is going to be a good deck overall. All right, next we got called this Obs Apocalypse. Um, it's a little bit of a combo that I found while I was looking through cards, and this is mostly a mono black deck, except for Obnixilis Adversary. It's the only red card that we have in the whole deck. Um, but I will get into the combo and when we get down to the Planeswalkers, probably. Um, so I'm going to go through these. Actually, let me go through them in a little bit out of order. I'm going to skip over this Knight. Tenacious Underdog, playing 4 of them. It's a great 2-drop. Awesome card. Play it off our graveyard. Of course, this gets shut down by Karn Silex, so this might be a little bit of a difficult card to play or sideboard, or if somebody else is siding in games 2 and 3. If you're playing best of 3, best of 1, I think this is just that's going to be a good card no matter what. Braid's Arisen Nightmare. I put 2 of these in here, and this was kind of like a fringe card to just stick in there on curve. We actually have a lot of 3-drops in this deck, so I only put 2 of them in there. It's also legendary. But I think this is going to be a good card, um, especially in this deck. You don't mind sacrificing some things. Um, Obviously, the tokens that we get off Fob Nixilis, with Tenacious Underdog, not that big of a deal to be sacrificing those. But I'm not sure about this card. It does give us card draw. Does help us ping down the opponent 2 life. But I just want to test it out and see how it works in the deck. So I put a couple of them in there. Might not be the right deck for it, but I'm going to try it, I think, when we get to the point of release. And I think this is actually going to be one of the main decks that I want to try to play. We got 4 Shakedown Heavies. This card's another form of card draw, and it's a 6/4 Menace for 3, so it's a great rate. And this is kind of a part of one of our combo pieces. It plays a really important role in the deck outside of just being a big body. We got Shoulder the Apocalypse. This is another card that I'm not sure how good it's going to play in the new standard. But I put 4 of them in here because this is the piece number 1 of our combo. So I'm going to jump down to Obnixilis, the Adversary, put 4 of these in here because it's a fantastic card. And so what we're trying to do overall in this deck is the combo-ish thing that I've been talking about. I guess it's not too much of a combo, but anyway, so we're going to try to drop a Shakedown Heavy, and we'll probably attack with it, and then see what the opponent tries to do, whether they give us another card or they just take the 6 damage. It really doesn't matter. It'd be great if they took the 6 damage, but most of the time opponents just untap this and let you draw the card. Um, and then we want to have a shoulder down either the next turn, or we're going to have an Obnixilis down the next turn after the Shakedown Heavy. And then we want to sacrifice the Shakedown Heavy to the casualty cost, which puts our token for the Obnixilis at 6 loyalty when it comes in. Then it only takes 1 turn to get to the ultimate. And then the ultimate is target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life. With Shieldred out, we can force our opponent to draw the 7 cards, lose 7 life, and then they lose an additional 14 life off of Shieldred's ability. So even if we're not able to do any damage to the opponent at all at the beginning of the game, this does 21 damage to them. It's an automatic kill. As long as they don't have a way to counter the triggered ability, which I think there's 1 card in standard that's able to do that. Can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but barring that they have that card in their hand, it's just an auto win. And then we'll jump back down here to the Knight's Dusk Rose. This is just a solid 2-drop. It's got menace, 2/2, but the really important part is our opponents can't gain life. So if we can drop this, or even drop multiple of these early in the game, we're going to stop our opponent from gaining life. And if you've played a lot of Arena, then you know that Arena players love to gain life in every every type of Magic game there is. Doesn't matter what format, historic, pioneer, standard, whatever they're playing. It just doesn't matter. They love their life gain decks. So this, I mean, you can also pay 1 and a black to give this +1/+1 with menace. That actually makes it pretty good overall 2-drop anyway. But really, we're just in here, have this in here so our opponents can't gain life. That way they can't get out of range, because obviously the Shakedown Heavy and the Obnixilis are both 3-drops. The Shouldred's a 4-drop, so our best case scenario is probably like turn 5. We're able to try to assemble this. But then we have all of our control cards that are pretty much back from the mono black control deck of the past. Um, Obviously, Liliana the Veil is new, but it serves the same purpose of it's going to be a good control card as far against control with its +1, making them discard cards. It's going to be a good against creature decks, making them sacrifice stuff, and then if you're able to ultimate it, you can basically cut their permanents in half. Um, so, I mean, I think this is just going to be a staple in black decks that aren't trying to play too many colors, because it's Liliana the Veil, and it's been around forever, and everybody loves this card. So, I think it's going to be good. It's going to help us slow down our opponent so we can assemble this board presence of our little combo we got going on here. Then we got Cut Down. I'll put 4 of these in there. I think this is going to be a really solid removal spell. This gets rid of a lot of stuff. I just watched a video the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about all the cards that this actually hits, and it just made me think, like, how many cards are really relevant where this can remove them for 1 mana, and it's a lot. So this is going to be a great card. Good early game no matter what. And then even late game, there's a lot of cards that this takes out. So um, I thought about playing, and actually I think I had it in here at one point. I thought about playing Infernal Grasp or the Black March, whatever the Black March is. I can't remember its whole name, but I thought about playing, maybe two cut downs and then two Infernal Grasps or two of the marches, so we can really make sure that we're hitting everything as far as our opponent's board, be able to take as much out as possible to just control the board state and not get too far behind so we can assemble everything. Then we got 4 Invoked Despairs. This card's fantastic. Another good way to remove creatures, planeswalkers, enchantments. Like I said, I think enchantments are going to be big going forward in the new standard after rotation. So that's going to be a bomb in this deck for sure, as far as controlling the board. And then we got 3 Meathook Massacres. I don't know if 3 is the number for this either. I was kind of like Liliana the Veil. I put 3 of those in there. I don't know if that's the number or if maybe we want 2 Lilianas and 4 Meathooks, 2 Meathooks and 4 Lilianas. Um, we're kind of maxed out on our curve for everything else. I don't know if there's a card that I'm missing that maybe we want. Maybe we want someone cut one of these and one of these and put in the 2 Infernal Grass. That way we just know that we're going to be able to take out anything that the opponent throws at us, so we can get all of our pieces on the board. And I started to do a sideboard for this. I actually think it was pretty close to my sideboard that I had for one of my other decks up here. It's mostly black cards in that sideboard. So I think this is going to work out pretty well. I think this is going to be pretty close to where I want it to be. We got 400 Ridge, 2 Sulphurous Springs, 16 Swamps, and then 2 Takanawas to get back any of our pieces that maybe we sacrificed to the Braids or the Obnixilus, just to kind of give us a little more card advantage, keep things going. Obviously, we have the 2 legendary creatures that will allow us to make this a little bit cheaper, so we can do this for maybe 2 mana at the end of our opponent's turn to get something back. And yeah, that's basically mono black, like mid-range control-ish deck. All right, next we have Legends Matter. And this deck was hurting my brain. This was a really hard deck to build. There's just so many legendary creatures, and picking through all of them and just trying to figure out what everything works together, what we're going to need. In the past, I've played a lot of Legends Matter decks. I played them in Commander, I played them in Historic, Modern, um, tried to assemble the pieces for these kind of decks a lot, and they always end up being kind of like a toolbox deck. Obviously, in older formats, we have Sisei Weatherlight Captain, so I mean, that is the toolbox card for Legends. But in the standard, there's always these extra cards that you just want to throw a one of in there just to get the effect. But it's always hard to pick out how many of everything to put in there because they're all legendary, and there's this thing called the legend rule. It makes it really difficult. But this is what I came up with. So I got 4 Catildas for mana ramp, and I think Werewolves might be a deck that runs around. So that top line on Catilda might be relevant, might not be relevant. I don't think it will be after we kind of get into standard, but I think early werewolves might be a pretty big archetype that people are going to play just to try to climb the ladder. And so, yeah, the 1/1 counters on this I don't think are going to be relevant. It's 6 mana, it just costs too much. And I mean, maybe in some situations use it, but I don't see it being used very often. Got 4 Thalias. Um, as you can see, this is a extremely creature heavy deck. Again, so this is going to be great against other decks because I think there's going to be enchantments running around. There's going to be the possibility of planeswalkers decks running around, control decks. There's so many. You'll see the last deck that we're going to go over is Spellslinger deck. Is it Spellslinger deck? So this is going to be a great card against those kind of decks to tax all their extra stuff, kind of slow them down a little bit. Got 2 Adelines. Uh, it's just a really good 3 drop. It's really hard to kind of throw into this deck because of the double white, but I think with the lands that we have, it may not matter too often. It shouldn't. Hopefully, we don't get stuck on this card very often. But I mean, it's really good. Gives us extra creatures, and um, if you haven't figured it out yet, this is got like a humans. It's not even a sub theme. These are basically legendary humans. So the extra humans that Adeline creates are going to be able to tap for mana. It's going to be able to ramp us. Um, and I think that's going to be really important, um, especially to get because this Timeless Lotus is a really important card for this deck, I think. Um, so we're gonna obviously the tokens might not stick around too long because there's a lot of small mana cost creatures that are kind of big that are they have good stat lines that are coming out in Dominaria United. So I don't know how many of them are going to stick around, how many of them aren't, but um, even getting 1 or 2 to stick on the board, uh, even if they try to go after an Adeline and leave the 1/1 there, it being able to tap for mana is super important. Um, then we got 2 Brutal Cathars. This is, I think, the only non-legendary creature that's in the deck. Obviously, it's a human. Um, and because we're playing a lot of creatures, we don't have a ton of interactions. We're just kind of playing to our game plan for the most part in this deck. So I had to throw a couple of these in there, and uh, in order to have removal, and the number on this might be more. We might play 3 or 4 of these just because we need that interaction. Then we have Ligrel and the Magpies. This is our other one of our other sources of removal that's on a stick. Um, you can exile something on their board until it leaves the battlefield, and this is going to be a really good card. It's going to be really important. Yeah, it's kind of a fragile creature, but for a note, I actually thought about having Seraph in this deck, the 2 mana, well, 2 and 2 green, 4 mana creature that gives your stuff hexproof if it's untapped. I don't think we're going to be attacking with the Growler very often, so maybe that's a good sideboard option, or just maybe a good main board option that we can look into after this deck's going to take some play testing to get all the numbers and the cards right on it. So that might be something that we end up adding in. Then we have Ren, Carlos, Stalwart Slayer. This is 2/3 legendary human. Flying haste, the really important. Why I put this in there is um, for the direct damage. If a spell would deal damage to you or another permanent you control, you prevent that damage. The second line of text on this is useless in this deck because we're not playing um, any spells that deal damage. But this is just a one of that I put in there to prevent against like those spell slinger decks or Gruul decks. They're going to be playing lightning strikes because lightning strike and people play it just because they're playing red. Um, so that's going to be in here to definitely stop that. Uh, then we have Shana Purifying Blade, two of these in there. Um, this is one of our card draw engines. It's kind of one of our only um, card advantage engines. We have two more in here, but this is going to be our big one for sure. Um, there's not really any other really ways to gain life in this deck outside of Shauna, so she might be pretty important to try to keep around. Um, and we have a couple of ways of doing that, or bringing her back, or we're definitely going to be able to grow her. So I think Shauna has the potential to be, like a 6/6, 7/7, 8/8 light with Link. And then you won't, late game, you definitely, when you know you're running low in cards in your hand, you're obviously not going to pour all of your mana into this. I think we want to be able to maybe save some mana for like Urtai. It's really the only card that we have that we're saving mana for that I can think of. Um, but if you have extra mana laying around at the end of the turn, it's going to be great. Draw a bunch of extra cards. It's going to be able to refill our hand. Um, I think it's going to be uh, our only way to really stay in games against stuff that is like control decks or discard decks or anything that's trying to slow your hand down or your board presence down, um, like heavily any control decks of any kind. Then we have Urtai. It's a legendary Phyrexian human, and this we can use to counter spells, activate abilities, or triggered abilities. This was the card that I was thinking of earlier that does that. There might be another one, but um, yeah, we can use this as basically a counter spell on a stick. It has flash. It does let our opponent draw a card. So it's going to be one of those cards that maybe we let this set in our hand throughout the game, and it's just going to be kind of a tempo thing. Um, it's going to be really hard early when we're trying to figure out what kind of decks people are playing, what kind of cards they're playing in those decks. It's going to be a lot harder to guess as to what our opponent's trying to do or trying to play. But this is going to be a good card to kind of turn the game around if we need to. We can destroy creatures or planeswalkers with it, and they draw a card. But this is one of our other sources of removal, and it might just be one that we let sit in our hand for a while and hold mana up for it as much as possible, which isn't, I don't think is going to be too hard with the Catilda and Timeless Lotus and Teferi. Um, so yeah, it's going to be something that we hold on to and just use it at the right point, or try to use it for a turning point if we get behind in a game and try to turn the game around, because I think this deck's definitely going to be able to turn games around really quickly once you turn the corner and you stabilize. I think this deck can just take off and close games out really fast. Ratadrabic, put one of these in here. Obviously, this cares about legends, legends dying, and I just think that this card is bonkers. The things that you can do with it are going to be kind of crazy. Um, I don't know if we want to kind of get into the place where we're trying to recur things out of the graveyard or not. Um, but even even so, it's probably going to end up just being something that's on the board where, say, we have a Joda or a Sigarda or a Shana or anything that's a really important legendary card in here. They're going to be forced to have to go after the Radradravik and use two removal spells in order to get rid of whatever the other card is that they're trying to get rid of. Because, um, if we have one of these out there and a Joda, say, and they want to remove the Joda, then we're just going to get another Joda back. Obviously, it'll be smaller, um, but then they're going to have to use the two removal spells just to get rid of the Joda, and then we still have the Radradravik. So this is going to force our opponent to try to get rid of this, and it's going to be a little bit hard to get rid of with a Ward 2. Um, so this might be a card where maybe I might try to squeeze another one of these in there. Um, Maybe you want to go down a Thalia or go down a Catilda. Not, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the answer is for that until we kind of get into playing. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a card where we start adding a couple more into the deck. Obviously, it's not a human, and you may see why that matters when we get to the lands if you haven't seen it already. Um, but being that it's not a human, this might be a card that's a little bit harder to cast. So we're gonna have to play around with it, see exactly where we want to go, how many of these we want to put in there. Then we have two Sigarda Light of Champions. It is a human lord, basically, and she gives us another source of card advantage. Um, I think in the past, this card was a little bit underplayed, maybe because humans weren't exactly good. Uh, and in the standard that we're in right now, prior to rotation, you just don't have the option to play bad cards, right? Like, not Sigarda, I don't think is a bad card by any means, but we couldn't play like average humans in a deck in order to try to make this work because standard was just so powerful that you would get buried really fast trying to play below average or average cards. Um, you were almost forced to play good cards, great cards on every turn. And you just had to keep playing good stuff. Um, so I think this card gets better, and I think Coven is going to get easier to achieve um, now that we have a smaller card pool. I know that kind of sounds weird, but with um, all of these humans that are just getting thrown into standard now in Dominaria United, which like I think like 80%. I don't know what the real number is, but it's like 80% of the legendary creatures are all humans, even if it's just a subtype, like Murtai or Shana or whatever. Like they all have a human creature type. So having the bigger array of humans to choose from, uh, and relevant humans, I guess I should say, of like actual relevant cards that are playable. Um, I think that it's just going to make the Coven ability that much easier to achieve. And then this is going to go grab us humans off the top of our library and just going to keep the deck churning. And, it's going to be really good. Then we have Joda. Joda is the reason why we're playing this deck. Um, it's obviously like a coat of arms for legendary creatures, and it gives legendary Cascade, which is absolutely ridiculous. And obviously it's Woolberg. It's going to be kind of hard to cast. It's going to be kind of hard to cast on curve. Um, but maybe having Catilda and these other, other humans outside of red, the red mana, because all we have is the one rem, uh, other than Joda itself, to produce that red mana as far as Catilda's ability goes. Um, but that's going to make everything, all the other four colors, fairly easy to get. Um, so we'll see. And I think we have the right lands to make this actually not that hard. Um, maybe we get stuck in a couple of games where we kind of get stuck on mana and we're not able to cast Joda on curve like we want to. But um, I think for the most part, we'll be able to put the right lands in this deck to make it happen probably like 90-95% of the time, and I think that's better. It's more than good enough, um, and more than a good enough reason to play Joda because the card's just ridiculous. Um, we're playing 4 copies of Teferi of the Sunset, or who slows the sunset, also because it's going to give us mana ramp, um, and it's going to give us card advantage, and then the huge thing is um, like we have Timeless Lotus, and Timeless Lotus comes in the battlefield tapped. So, if you get to turn 5 and we're stuck on 4 colors and we can't play Joda, um, but we have our Teferi out, right? Um, and say we're just stuck on that red mana, and we can cast the Timeless Lotus, use the Teferi to untap it, and then play Joda, and then Timeless Lotus basically becomes free. So having Teferi out uh, makes this Timeless Lotus absolutely 10 times better. It's so much better. Being able that we can basically cast it for free on turn 5 and then play anything else in our deck. Whatever we want. And that's why we're playing 4 copies of Teferi. Um, I think it might even be relevant that if at some point in the game you have a Teferi down already, and even if you've been plussing it for like a turn or two, and you might be getting close to the emblem, um, uh, Teferi's emblem is really good. So I don't know if this is really what you want to do, but I could really see like plus in Teferi or minus in Teferi because you're gonna drop another one. Grab another card in your hand, playing another Teferi, um, just so you can play the Timeless Lotus for free the next turn. Um, I don't know if that really makes sense now that I say it, but regardless, I can see you sacrificing one Teferi to play another one just so you can use that plus ability. I mean, maybe you already have the Timeless Lotus down and you um, want to play the Timeless Lotus and then untap it so you can play a Joda and then untap it again. So you could play another, you could play Sigarda or, anything else and then get Cascade off of it. Which is going to make for like super explosive turns. Um, and I think it's just going to be really good. And then we have 3 copies of Mirror Box. This might be a card where 3 isn't enough. We want to play the 4th copy of it just because um, if we can get 2 Jodas on the battlefield, uh, 2 Jodas and a Ratadrabik on the battlefield, if we can get multiple copies of especially Joda, but um, even some of the other legends that we have that are really good on their own, like, I mean, you're just going to take games over. And it's an Anthem effect. Um, and it's another Anthem effect if you have two copies of something out there. So, I mean, you're talking like if you have a Joda out and then you have a mirror box out, you played mirror box on turn 3 or whatever, then you play a Joda the next turn. Um, Now you're getting plus one for Joda, and then you're getting the um, coat of arms effect for Joda, and then you can drop another Joda the next turn. So you have two coat of arms effects, and then you have two plus ones from Mirror Box, and well, you would just get the two of them for the Mirror Box. You get the regular for each legendary creature, and then you get for each one that has the same name. Or they just give each other plus one. I haven't even figured that out yet, but it's going to be really good. Um, so this deck, obviously, there's a lot going on in it. There was cards that I wanted to fit in here, like I think King Darien might be all right, even though we're not really playing a lot of tokens. But maybe if you wanted to get away from the human sub theme and play more Ratadrabix and play King Darians, King Darians would protect your legendary tokens, which is kind of a cool thing. Um, so for lands, we have two of the blue and white pain lands, two of the black and white pain lands, two evolving wilds. Um, we're only playing forests, islands, and plains as far as basic lands because the majority of our deck is Bant. We have the one red card, and then we have the three black cards outside of Joda. But everything else is basically Bant, especially lower in our curve. So I wanted to play the untapped planes just to make sure that we're hitting stuff on curve as best as possible. We're playing Plaza Up Heroes, which in this deck taps for any color and all the time because outside of Teferi, there's nothing that this doesn't cast. Um, yeah, the and it protects our legends, or at least a legend, right? But the clauses that come on this card that make it has to be legendary or whatever is, I mean, it's irrelevant. This basically is a command tower, or you know, whatever. It comes in, it taps for any color, 90%, 99% of the time. Teferi is the only. Actually, no, Teferi is. It says legendary spell, right? So yeah, this just casts everything in the deck. It's play this and tap it for a color of any mana. So that's super good in this deck. And then we have Secluded Courtyard, which I think is actually, even though Plaza of Heroes is really good, I think this is just the card that makes everything come together. And that's why we're playing all humans for the most part, because you play this, choose humans, and then you can cast humans. You can cast everything in the deck, basically. Um, two of the red and blue pain lands, and then the Spara's headquarters. We got four of those because, like I said, everything's basically banned. On to the next one. All right. This, I think, is going to be my bread and butter deck, which is why I have the sideboard for it. This is the first deck that I worked on. I think this deck's going to be really, really good. So we have three Phoenix Chicks. I think this card is just, it's all right. It's a one drop. It's a decent one drop. I really wanted to have a one drop. The fact that it has haste and flying are really good, but I really wanted to have something that comes back from the graveyard. Um, and then we have Tenacious Underdog. We got four of those. We got four Annoyed Peacekeepers to kind of keep our opponent off of whatever their game plan is, whatever they're trying to do, slow them down. Um, Especially, I haven't talked about like mirror matches very much with these decks, but this is going to be a good card in like a mirror match, especially if you're on the play and you can get ahead of your opponent with this. You can slam this down and choose their anointed peacekeeper and make theirs um, more expensive to cast, which is funny. Um, we have two Brutal Cathars, obviously for removal, and it's just a good card in general. And then we have four Archangels of Wrath. Um, we're playing Mardu in this deck. I don't know what I called it Mardu Graveyard. I don't think I really thought about the name for this deck very well. Um, but we're playing Mardu colors, so this could be a 6 drop. Obviously, we're playing Sarah Paragon. Um, we have 6/4/4 or 4 drops. So this is probably going to end up being something that we're not going to play on turn 4 most of the time anyway. So we can take advantage of the kicker. It's going to allow us to gain life, and either kill some other things or just hit our opponent to the face. And then Sarah Paragon, which is one of the reasons why I wanted him to be able to play um, some of this cheaper stuff that comes back from the graveyard. So the underdog and the Phoenix chick, um, obviously they come back to the battlefield on their own, but this gets around their clauses that they have on them to bring them back from the graveyard. So if we drop the Sarah Paragon, we can just play them straight up. Um, I think it's gonna be a great. This like Brutal Cathar and Sarah Paragon is gonna be a super awesome combo. Uh, because you play your Brutal Cathar on whatever they got going on, take away one of their main pieces. Their first objective for the opponent is probably going to be to try to get rid of the Brutal Cathar. Um, there are times where they're going to play around it, but um, they're definitely going to try to remove the Brutal Cathar at some point in time. And barring the event that we're playing against like an enchantment style deck, because there's a ton of enchantments that exile things underneath the card until it leaves the battlefield. So outside of that, if they get rid of any of these cards, which I think are all going to be good cards in the early game, they're going to draw a lot of removal. We'll just be able to drop the Sarah Paragon, play it over again. Playing Liliana the Veil, and I think this is going to be the type of deck where Liliana the Veil shines the most. Why I say that is because um, like Liliana's +1 of discarding cards, it wants to go into a specific deck for the most part. Otherwise, it's going to be a drawback for both players, right? Like, so our goal with Liliana is going to be to plus her. We're discarding cards, which we're going to be able to get back out of the graveyard because of Sarah Paragon or the clauses that are on these cards where we can just play them straight out of the graveyard. And then our opponent is not going to be able to do that, at least hopefully as effectively. So it's going to give us a huge card advantage where we're going to attack our opponent's hand, and then our hand we're just going to play out of our graveyard as well. So I think that's going to be kind of a place where Liliana shines. Maybe if it's not totally in this shell, it's going to be um, in a shell like this where it's going to be trying to do these kind of things. So we're playing 3 Ob Nixilis. Like I said, this card's good. It's going to be able to take advantage of, again, the Phoenix chick, the underdog, um, Sarah Paragon's ability. We're going to be able to play the Ob Nixilis, play it with a casualty, sacrifice a creature. It's probably going to be one of these two guys. Most likely going to be the Tenacious Underdog majority of the time, if we can. And sorry, guys. it's going to be, um, and then we'll be able to play those cards out of our graveyard. Uh, so again, we're taking advantage of, we're getting the extra token, which is almost like card advantage, and then we're able to get the stuff back that we're sacrificing to the Obnix list. And then we're playing 3 cutdowns, 2 Infernal Graphs, and 2 Lightning Strikes. I think it's a good bit of removal with the Liliana and the Brutal Cathar. We have a good array of removal spells and a good balance between removal and like closers. And really, I think we're just, for the most part, we're just really trying to grind the opponent down with this deck. We don't really have a big like banger, um, or we're just getting in for a lot of damage all at once. It's just gonna be a deck we're trying to grind guys out. And then obviously 4 maybe Fable of the Mirror Breaker, because this card's just awesome. Um, one cool interaction with this is going to be uh, when it flips, we get the reflection of Kiki, and then we can make copies of the Archangel of Wrath, and then we can play the kicker cost, if I'm correct, uh, off of the token coming into play. I'm not sure on that, but if I'm reading it correctly, we can make a token copy of the Archangel and then kick it again, shoot some more things, gain some more life. Um, the uh, the token that comes off of this is going to be something that we sacrifice to the Obnix list a lot too, so we don't have to jump through the hoops to get this stuff back out of the graveyard and kind of hold our board state down and fall behind in the game. So then we got 4 Kids Koyos, 1 Iganjo for a little extra removal, just in case. Um, 3 on a Ridge, 2 Mountains, 1 Plains, 3 Shattered Sanctums, 4 Sulphurous Springs. If it wants to bring it up for me, that's our pain land, red black pain land. 3 Sundown Pass, 2 Swamps, and 1 Takanuma. I think that even though we got all the triumphs in the last set, we didn't get anything from Mardu. Oh my god. Must be getting late. Um, even though we didn't get like a Mardu triumph, and we didn't get, so we got the Caves of Koyos, the Painland, the white and black one, and then the Sulphurous Springs. So we kind of got the Mardu colors in that. But even so, with the whatever you call these lands, slow lands, I think we have a really good mana base for this deck. So we're never going to really be waiting for a color on the mana. And we're playing mostly Orzhov in this. We don't have a ton of red. But it's enough that having all 3 colors of the lands and being able to hit them consistently is going to be really important. Trying to play a 3-color deck, so, and we don't have to play any of the new tapped lands that are basically just for domain. They have the basic land types. We're not forced to play any of the tapped lands. So these slow lands or whatever are going to be the only ones that if we end up with our hands, that ends up kind of awkward. Then this one, we had sideboard, put 4 duress to really knock home against the control decks, because I think control decks might be pretty popular. March of the Otherworldly Light. This is a card that I actually thought about main decking, but again, even though we have the great mana base, or a really good mana base here, we really want to have our untapped lands early in the game for the right colors. So we want to have red and black mana and black mana and red mana um, in our early game. So we don't have anything for white before turn 3. So if we have to play a tapped white mana source, it's not that big of a deal. Um, or, we don't necessarily have to use like the pain lands all the time. Um, so I put that in the sideboard when we do the play testing with this deck and see how it goes. You might decide to change that, but for now, put 2 of them in the sideboard, and this might not even be enough for the sideboard. We might have to put a couple more of these in here, one or two more, just because it has the flexibility. It can hit artifacts, it can hit enchantments, and it's just a really good all-around card. Then I put 2 pilfers in here. This is the other one. Maybe like we just switch this up and have the 2 marches instead of the 2 pilfers. But this is just another discard effect. So if we really want to go hard on the discard, um, even if like our opponent is playing like aggro, um, Liliana hits all card types for discarding, even though we don't get to pick it. And then Pilfer is all non-land card types. Obviously, the Duress is just non-creature, non-land, but having that extra non-land, we can maybe against aggro decks even like knock off their big parts early in the game, and then or at least just their big payoffs for the deck. And then, if they're just stuck with like a couple of little 1/1s or 2/2s that really don't do a lot, then it's not that big of a deal. Then we have 2 Mia Massacres. Uh, I thought that we had enough spot removal in this deck all around that I didn't really need to play Meat Hook in the main board. Um, and maybe that's not right either, but I think this is going to be the better setup for this deck is to have the Mia Hook in the sideboard, and then we'll bring it in against like if there's like token decks running around because there's a lot of support for token decks or just aggro in general, where players are just trying to go wide or whatever, then we can just bring this in out of the sideboard. Then we have Body Wanderer. Put this in the sideboard mostly because I thought this was maybe even a main deckable card, just because of the ability where we're going to have creatures dying, so we can grow this thing, make it a bigger death touch creature, and then um, when it dies, we can bring something from the graveyard back to the battlefield. So we're just having this um, like consistent engine where we're just every time we're putting one of our creatures into the graveyard, we're able to bring it back, we're able to bring it back, we're able to bring it back. And uh, it's just another effect like that. So it's obviously in a different color than having these 2. So um, I think the Launderer get back? Yeah, the Launderer can get back to Archangel of Wrath. Um, so maybe if we want to drop down a Seraph Paragon or an Anointed Peacekeeper because they don't have a lot of stuff with like activated abilities and just the taxing effect isn't working out, then we can play the Body Launderers or something instead, where we're able to just keep recurring more creatures and keep bringing stuff back to the battlefield. Obviously, we have some enter the battlefield effects going on here, not like super powerful ones, but we have them, and I thought that was just another way to kind of to beat home the goal behind the deck. Then we have 2 Drag to the Bottoms. I think this card's going to be really good. Um, Obviously, I said that we weren't really playing the lands that we needed to try to achieve the most domain that we can achieve by not playing the tap lands. And maybe we can throw one of those, two of those in here and just sacrifice a little bit of speed and in order to turn on this drag to the bottom a little bit better. But I'm not sure if we need to because I mean we are in three types um, and if we can get all of our basics, or even if we can just get two basic land types out of this, then we're playing drag to the bottom for 4 and everything gets -3. And then I think that's kind of where we want to be at anyway with that card if we're going to play it, because Sarah Paragon's a 3/4, Archangel Rat's a 3/4, um, and then, everything else is going to die to that. But uh, being able to keep our angels, um, if we can just wipe the board and then we got a couple of turns where we can just swing in with these 2, 3, 4s, then we just maybe take over the game and win like that. And then I got 2 Wandering Emperors in here. It's another card where it's definitely main deckable. It's definitely like a super good card. Um, but I do think that there's quite a few like vigilant creatures, and people are just going to be trying to play vigilant creatures more often because Wandering Emperor exists essentially, and um, maybe this is gets main decked too, um, or we're just gonna put it in the sideboard for like creature heavy decks, um, and maybe they just don't see it coming. You know what I mean? We play a game where, being that this is kind of a grindy deck that we've played, 15, 20 turns into the game before we win or before we lose. And then we bring in the Wandering Emperor, and they're just assuming they were not playing it because they didn't see it in the game one. And we kind of are able to take them by surprise. Um, I don't know if that's going to work or not, but it sounded good. So, uh, yeah, I'm not sure about this sideboard in general, and I'm not sure what I'm taking out of the main deck in order to play any of these sideboard cards in the main board, because I really like what we got going on in the main deck right now. So we're just going to see how the meta works out, and then we're going to move on to the last deck, and I might try to be a little bit quick about this deck because we're getting a little long in the video, um, and I like to ramble a lot. So this deck is way out of my comfort zone. It's not the type of deck that I normally try to play, but I can't really ignore the fact that this is probably going to be a deck. Maybe not exactly this, right? Because, I mean, this isn't something that I normally try to build. Um, but this deck is going to exist. You will see this deck in some shape or form in standard going forward because there's just too many cards that support it. And I think a lot of them are good. So, it's like is it spell slinger deck? And I think that this deck probably has the option to go Naya, um, and I will tell you why I think that when we get to the end of the deck. All right. So we have Belmore, Battlemage Captain. This card is super awesome. A lot of people are hyped about this card. Uh, I would be hyped about this card if I played this archetype often, or like this archetype, and maybe it's something that would like turn me on to this archetype. I don't know, but um, yeah, super good card. Playing lots of instant sorceries, so it's going to have all of your creatures. A jump reminds me of Adelise, and by the way, if you're playing an older format, this might be a deck that I play in an older format because it's a wizard, and Adelise is a wizard, and Adelise cares about wizards, and they both kind of have the same effect, like a prowess type effect. And this one gives them trample, so I can see that deck. I'm not sure how you work it because I had a little bit of a hard time deciding how many creatures that I wanted to play in this deck because the ones that are in here are really good, and I wanted to be able to leave room for spells too. Um, but I think this card can get out of hand, especially if you can get a little bit later in the game, like turn 7 or 8, and you're able to just pop off like 2 or 3 or 4 of these smaller costing instants and sorceries, and you can just grow your whole team and beat everybody down, or beat your opponent down. Then we have Smoldering Egg, um, another card that just starts out as a 0/4 defender. I'm sure you guys have seen this card before. It was in the last standard, or the current standard, I guess, um, and quite a few Izzet decks. Thank God that those decks are not going to be here anymore because Magma Opus was not a fun card to play against. It was one of the cards that I was happy to see go. Um, but this card was played in that deck, and obviously, if you can get this card to flip and then play instants and sorceries, um, especially if you have one of these other creatures on the board at the same time, and you're able to take advantage of the effects of those cards at the same time, you're gonna take out your opponent really fast. You're gonna snowball super fast and just take over games. Haughty Jin, it's the new card. It's gonna help you do that. Star 4, or its power is equal to the number of instant sorcery cards in your graveyard. It's a flyer, which I think is really important. And then it makes your instant sorcery spells cheaper. So this is just gonna be a ridiculous card in this deck. It's gonna be one of the main reasons why it gets played so often. And that's why uh, I'm not sure if this deck should be Naya or not, because the white card that goes with this, like Sten, we're playing. Basically, we have one sorcery in the deck. So we're playing like all instants, playing the one sorcery that can play with flash. So I tried to build this where everything was basically instant speed because I think that's super important. Didn't want to be playing a lot of sorceries, but if you play Sten and you name instants, and all of your instants become one cheaper, plus the Haughty Djinn. Now everything's two cheaper, two generic cheaper, and then maybe you start getting into like different instants and sorceries that are going to be really playable in this kind of a deck because everything is going to be too cheaper, and you're able to play big like 3 or 4 mana instants and sorceries for 1 or 2, then you're getting a lot of power for the amount of mana that you're putting into it, and you're basically you're going to grow your prowess and type effects that are in here, and just snowball and get out of control really fast. Then we have Lear. This card's obviously really good. I'm sure you guys have seen it. It's seen a little bit of play. And this is just gonna, give you one that's gonna be great in like mirror matches, because I'm sure that mirror matches in this type of deck archetype are going to be kind of frequent. You know, I think this is gonna be a highly played deck. So having a Lear in there, especially if your opponent doesn't have one, I guess it doesn't really matter because it's spells for everybody can't be countered. But taking the counter spells out of the game I think are super super good. But really, you're just playing this for the flashback for the most part, right? So that way you're able to take advantage of all the the stuff that you played earlier in the game to be able to grow all of your stuff over again and continue to beat down your opponent. Then we have two Jayas. Um, this is a card that I think you might want one more of. I think the number might be three. I wasn't sure where I could put it in to get it to three, but I think this might be, you might want three of these in your deck. Um, but I put two in here, and it's super good, right? Like, um, I don't know if I really know the place for Jaya yet, as far as where she's going to fit, what kind of deck she's going to fit into after Dominaria United releases. But I think this is definitely going to be one of them. Having the monks with prowess is going to be super relevant, super good. Um, we do have quite a few like card advantage cards in here, drawing cards, or um, stuff that just keeps the deck rolling along. Um, Obviously, Lear is kind of a part of that, but this is just extra card advantage if you need it. Being able to exile stuff off the top of your library, and then um, I don't really know how often you're gonna want to use the -2 on this. Obviously, it's removal, and then if you have a really big problem creature that this takes care of, then that's probably what you're going to want to do to be able to get that problem creature off the board. Um, and I think we have enough, like the right balance of creatures and spells in here where you're going to be able to take advantage of all the modes on this effectively. Um, but I think really we're going to want to get to the emblem on this. That's going to be the goal. You play this, and then you're just going to try to race to 8, and then I think you're just willing to sacrifice Jaya to that, right? Because um, when you cast a red instant or sorcery, you can copy it twice. Um, that being said, I only put one, about 4 lightning strikes in here for that. But even so, if you're able to even play just one lightning strike with this after you've emblemed it, and you have, 2 or 3 of those prowess creatures, plus the Belmore, plus the Smoldering Egg, if you can flip it, um, you're just putting so much power on the board all at once. Plus, you can just lightning strike them to the face. You're getting 3 copies, the original plus the 2 copies. Um, or you can get rid of their 2 blockers or the 3 blockers, whatever. Um, and then you have all the excess damage that you're just throwing on the board here, and I think it's Jai's Emblem is just going to be a game winner in this deck. Of course, maybe you just want to be playing like a Strangle or Play with Fire or a couple of other red instants or sorceries if you need to. Um, Instead of I got a couple of uh, counter spells in here, like negate. Don't know. I don't know if negate's going to be the card. Maybe you're going to have a couple of these in the main board, and you're going to sideboard the other 2, and then you can just throw like 2 Play with Fire in here. And maybe that's just a better place to be. Um, but I have 4 considers. Um, it's just a good one drop to help you fix your draw and draws you a card. Helps you later in the game to kind of dump your lands if you don't need them anymore, and then draw other cards off the top. Fading Hope, great tempo card. Um, Found somebody's stuff, you get to scry off of it. Played Syncopate. two of those, played two impulses to, again, be able to look at the top four cards of your library, pick one, and then put the rest into the bottom of your library. Um, so you'll be able to pick instants and sorceries off the top, or pick your Jaya off the top, or whatever cards you need at the moment off the top, and be able to play it. Being an impulse is fairly cheap, and it's kind of a good early game card, right? The four lightning strikes, the four negates, which talked about maybe changing the number of that, and then I put two silver scrutinies in here. So I know it's been talked about that this card probably just isn't better than Memory Deluge, but with playing the Haughty Djinn and then playing with the option that maybe we were going to be playing this in Jeskai. I think maybe I said Naya earlier. Right? Yeah, Jeskai. But if you want to be in Jeskai for this, you want to be able to play white in it, so you can play Sten instead of maybe Lear or whatever. Then at the very least, even with the deck as the way it is right now, you play the Haughty Djinn, your Memory Deluge costs one less to play, then you're looking at the top three, and you get to pick two. So you're cutting down on the amount of cards that you're getting to look at, and it kind of takes away from the Memory Deluge a little bit. And then I think the um, Silver Scrutiny is just made better by the cheapening of the cards. So, and especially if you want to play white in this, where you're making it two cheaper, then you could just play this for three and draw three cards at instant speed, or you can play it for one or two and draw two cards. Because the X would be free back then. It would just be two blue. Um, so I think that turns this into a fantastic card. And then for the lands, there's 9 islands, 7 mountains, 2 of the Otawara, just for a little bit of tempo, and getting rid of problem creatures or enchantments or whatever just for the moment. Um, because I think this deck can be so explosive that it might just be you bounce something with the Otawara and that wins you the game. That's just. Then the 4/7 Reefs and 2 of the Stormcraft Ghosts. And that is my 5 decks. So, if you like the video, like it, subscribe so you can check out more content. It can help the channel out. It can help other people check out the content. So you're not only helping me, you're helping others be able to find the videos. And then definitely I encourage you guys to put stuff down in the comments and tell me what you think that I did right, what you think that I did wrong in building these decks, what kind of sideboards that you might like in it, and then for the one deck that I actually got to the sideboard, if you think that I put the right cards in the sideboard, if you think something should be in the main deck. So please jump in the comments, let me know what you guys think, and check back in for another video. Catch you all later.